Then we have little Brayden, who we're praying is our laid back one. That we're actually going to get one of those who I see other moms having that say it's time to go, and they're like, okay, let's go, and no tantrums and stuff. So we're hoping that for the third one, our little boy. We'll see.
We were in Walmart this weekend with the kids, and and I told Tex, don't ever do this again. She got one of those little carts that where they can sit in. It's a shopping cart, but on the back you could sit in.
It's where
it.
the two children sit
And,
while you're shopping.
So
Have you
Taylor
seen that?
didn't want to
that.
sit in it. She's 5. She didn't want to sit in it.
She's
And
going
so
with
there
me.
was Riley sitting when I arrived. There was Riley sitting, and I looked and said, I think this is trouble. And sure enough, Riley was climbing on top of the cart and jumping off. And I said, I don't think we need to get one of these carts anymore.
So she kept Gran on her on his toes.
Yeah, but we had a great time. Well, what are some of the difficulties in dealing with 3 children that are so different? I mean, I know there are joys and difficulties. Talk about both of them. What do you face with 3 small children?
I think one of the big difficulties is keeping the big picture in mind, and just because day in and day out, you constantly have to persevere. You constantly have to be consistent with your discipline, and just keeping the big picture in mind that we're not going for just them to become the perfect little 3 or 4-year-olds right at this moment, but we're going ultimately for their heart and for their mind to be captured by Christ, and it takes it's a balancing act, because there's so many different areas and times where we've even said we just feel like giving up, but God continues to remind us that there's a big picture, and of don't even look to the short-term results of what the techniques that everyone says to use or whatever. Those can be great, and we do those for short-term solutions at times when you're just pulling your hair out and you need something to solve the problem. But to keep the overall picture in mind, I think that starts with cultivating an intentional atmosphere within your home of that helps to create space for these children to grow in the manner that you want them to grow.
Is there anything, for instance, okay, Taylor, who is the oldest, has kind of this learner spirit that you were talking about, and really this desire to learn and loves to share what she learns. Riley has this desire to step out and do things on her own and explore and go that way. Are there any things that you have learned that has helped you to deal with them in different ways, or do you deal with them the same way, or how do you
Like, for instance, when y'all were growing up, with you, we applied the spoon more because of that strong will, and we saw how that was part of the discipline that God showed us for you individually. With Renee, sometimes her dad would just look at her when she was little, and she would start crying, and so we used spoon on her too for discipline, but spanking. But so we had to learn that as parents, that there's different disciplines, there's different structures, there's different parameters that some can do and some cannot, and is that different with?
I think, for us personally, I think we're wholehearted believers that there's just from the age difference alone of being 5 and 3 and 4 months, there's different ways that you treat different situations, and that alone necessitates at times. Our kids, both Taylor and Riley, it takes several spankings to ever get a message through. But I think the harder part is trying to figure out there's so many, because we live in even within the Christian community, a multicultural, all different types of denominations and philosophies out there, and we have at our fingertips. Before you become parents, you quickly find out how much of a civil war there really is out there on parenting philosophies. And so from different Christian perspectives, trying to figure out what's right for your family is one of the tough things. And then you have other families who have different perspectives. And so I think that journey has been something that struggled through. It's been a good struggle, but struggled through, because before we had kids, we had it all figured out. We read a book and we were going to do this philosophy, and the only problem was once we had the child didn't cooperate. And so,
Hey, wait a minute. Don't
So
you
you're
know
gonna write-
understand our philosophy?
So you're going to write Dr. Dobson or Dr. whoever and say, hey, no, wait, let me present this to you as an option.
yeah, and I just think that and that causes, it's a good thing, because it causes an ultimate dependence on God. I'm
Yeah.
a firm believer of being intentional in your parenting and taking it seriously and cultivating that atmosphere that God's called you to cultivate. But on the other side of the pendulum, you have to realize too that it's the grace of God, and there's chaos in life, as there is in parenting, and there's times where you're desperate for God. And so finding that balance on the pendulum of depending on God and being intentional about how you parent.
And I think one of our biggest struggles was I was more laid back and like, and you were more like,
Firm,
firm.
and
There's a balance.
Probably,
We
though, I
realized.
think, and I wanted to ask him about this, is that was probably the greatest tension that we had as you guys were growing up, was, okay, she thought maybe the discipline ought to be this way, I thought this way, and sometimes I would come home and she would just say, "You're going to get it when your dad gets home." So I was the bad guy, and so do you guys struggle with that? I mean, having an agreement on, okay, how do we deal with this situation, or are y'all
still working
preset,
through
or
that,
you
or-
or
I think
something?
No,
For us, the hardest is we both typically see a lot of times when they need discipline. It's just a matter of neither of us want to administer it because we're so tired from administering
Staying
it.
out.
So and she gets tired because she's doing it all day, and then I don't want to come home and
Yeah.
that's just all I do. And so that's still it's more of an art than a science of trying to find out. Different days require different things. We don't have different days I have to be the heavy hand. Kelly's having a hard day and I have to administer all the discipline. There's other times where she recognizes it's part of being sensitive to one another as a husband and wife, and I think if your relationship's right with one another, that's going to help with the discipline part of children, because that and putting them down to bed and getting them to eat the right food. We have a few different issues.
We've been there, done that
three.
before. But you like squash now and Chinese food, and you didn't like that when you were growing up. But, so, yeah. So.
I've grown in my taste. And